loss of faith in electoral bodies and governance structures. This is quite important. Then we also have growing disconnects between the people and those in power, because when there is diminished trust, it creates a gap. Then the weakening of public institutions, we identified that in this report as another major consequence. And of course, growing the lack of inclusive participation and non-involvement of citizens and other stakeholders. So these are just what we see as consequences. So when we talk about electoral trust, we're essentially trying to shift from the region of skepticism to confidence in democracy. And so that is it. So for us, this report then captures the core elements of electoral trust as integrity, competence, inclusiveness, accountability, and consistency. And all these fall one way or the other into the four areas that Professor Ebiano identified earlier on in terms of the normative framework, the professional framework, the redress framework, and then the last one. So that's why we capture this in the report. So the report also notes that while INEC remains the most prominent stakeholder, it's essential that all critical parties, including citizens, civil society organizations, the media, political actors, security agencies, and the legislature are constantly engaged to implement changes that are inclusive, lawful, and in the public interest. And I should say at this forum that one of the things that the civil society organizations working under EUSDGN 2 have done is to present what we call the Citizens Memorandum on Electoral Reform to the Joint National Assembly Committee on Electoral Matters, which is looking at the proposed repeal of the Electoral Act 2022 and the enactment of a new one for 2025. So that is also one of the things we've done as a fallout of this. But all I've said provides the context for the series of media-led multi-stakeholders dialogue and forums that we held across the country, with the goal of building stakeholder consensus on measures to rebuild trust in electoral processes, institutions, and elections. And we conceived those forums in terms of objective as a platform for open but constructive dialogue among diverse stakeholders. The participants at all the forums were citizens, including youths, women, and persons with disability, journalists, and media professional bodies, including some of those represented here, labor, legal, academic, and other professional groups. Then, of course, INEC itself. INEC participated in all the forums. Law enforcement and security agencies, they were also constant at all the forums. Civil society groups, then the political parties and related groups. And I must say that we also invited IPAC, that is the Inter-Party Advisory Council. We hope that they would also join us, or probably they are already in the room, and others. Now, these forums were held in the North Central at Abuja, in Northwest in Kaduna, in the Northeast in Yola, Southwest in Lagos, South in Calabar, and Southeast in Oka. So we went to all those places. What we discovered is that despite this diversity in terms of regions, in terms of participants, and so on, there were some common themes that permeated all the discussions and recommendations. And then these include a demand for enhanced commitment and transparency in the administration of elections, with particular emphasis on logistics and the collation of results. In all the regions, this was a key issue. Then the other one was a demand for greater institutional independence for INEC. We can begin to discuss what would this really mean in reality. One of the things that has been observed, for example, is that even though INEC's money comes from the first charge and so on and is appropriated, but over time, these monies are not even entirely released or released as at when due. Then we have a demand for effective and comprehensive voter education, particularly targeting young people and rural communities. The other common theme was an enhanced role for media in addressing disinformation and promoting the perspectives of citizens. And then an enhanced and non-partisan oversight role by civil society organizations. This also means that at some of these forums, people would also question the civil society and asked if they had acted impartially, all along. So these were what emerged from this series of dialogues, like I said, in all those places. We started with the one in Abuja and then moved down to Lagos, from Lagos to Kaduna, then Kaduna to the south-south, then the northeast, and of course, finally, the southeast. We chose Oka deliberately because of the off-cycle governorship election that will take place this Saturday. So in terms of some of the specifics, when it comes to the key stakeholder roles in restoring trust and electoral integrity, I should say also that it was commonly agreed at all those forums that there were questions of trust, particularly because of aspects of the 2023 elections. This generated a whole lot of debates, especially with INEC representatives. But in terms of the specifics, so for INEC, one of the specific issues include ensuring transparency and accountability in all policies and communications. They believe that this can aid the restoration of trust. Then the results management, the enhanced BVAS and IRF systems to support verifiable transmission and ensure that result collations and announcements are conducted in accordance with the Electoral Act. The INEC 2 recommendation include proactive communication in terms of making information proactively available to counter disinformation. Then the need for staff ethics and capacity. The emphasis here being that there should be ongoing professional development for officials and ad hoc staff to strengthen both their expertise and their commitment to impartiality. And then prosecution of electoral offenders, effective pursuit and prosecution of electoral offenders to establish a strong deterrence. So that INEC too should maintain its consultations with stakeholders. That was a feature of the Professor Mahmoud-led INEC. There were quarterly consultations with the political parties, with the media, the civil society organizations, and the media. And this report is saying that tradition should be sustained. So that is for INEC. And then for political parties, the key issues that came up in all those dialogue were the issue of internal democracy, that how the absence of faith keeps affecting electoral, trust. And just to refer to what Prof was saying, how, trust creeps in generally. In Lagos State, there's a very funny side comment in the sense that in the past few months, somehow, a number of female officials had died, in the local governments who were holding positions, and some of these positions came by way of party, whatever. And in one of my discussions with somebody, it was just a very funny but quite cynical comment. And that person said, you see, when we say they should not impose, they impose all those women, and the people are finding ways to take care of them because of imposition. It just gives some insight into how people could reason sometimes. Then for political parties too, there is also the question of compliance with electoral regulations. And what informed this was the observation that, and Prof referred to how our elections are highly litigious, a lot of litigations. But studies have also shown that a higher percentage of those litigations didn't, or actually don't normally emanate from the conduct of elections, but from the conduct of party primaries. And sometimes this case go on up to Supreme Court till after the elections. And somebody who didn't even feature in the primaries could then be declared as a winner by the judiciary, as was the case of Rotimi Amechi in Rivers State. So this issue came up, having issue-based campaigns and financial accountability. On this, I was telling our colleagues at the International Press Center, we were in Anambra 2 weeks ago as part of our pre-election engagement, and we were watching some of the live campaigns of the incumbent governor. The whole question of how people so much like him that even on their own, they are giving him millions. And these millions were being presented at rallies, 200 million and so on. And somebody said I shouldn't be surprised that the richest billionaires in Igbo land are from Anambra State. Maybe we need a study on that. But I was then saying that is somebody really computing the figures of these donations to know what they amount to and relate it. So this is the kind of things that was discussed about political parties. Now we have the National Orientation Agency, and I'm glad that we have the representative of DG here, who is actually in charge of civil and democratic participation. I would also say here that the responsibilities there is about civic education, community partnerships, public awareness, and essentially doing more on anti-vote buying, encouraging citizens to oppose incentives, corruption and misinformation on the part of NOA. But like I said, we had the Citizens Memorandum, and one of the areas we are putting forward for electoral reform is actually that the responsibility for civic and voter education should either be taken away from INEC as a way of unbundling it to NOA, or co-shared with NOA. And it would be good to know the stand of NOA on this by the time we are leaving this place, because we think that that should be the major responsibility of your agency without prejudice to other functions that you carry out. But let me also say that in the course of those dialogues, a lot of scrutiny were made of the state NOAs. And I can tell you here for free that in Anambra State, the media were very, very critical of NOA. They even said, look, even when we are ready to get NOA, we don't see NOA. So perhaps NOA too will have to look at the issue of capacity for its heads in the various states, the directors, so that they can be abreast. I know that the current DG has been quite proactive, sharing information, WhatsApp messages on things like that. If such things are replicated at the states, perhaps you'll be playing your role in the electoral process. So for the media and civil society organizations, I think it's a very straightforward issue as to what we should be doing in terms of responsible media practice, emphasizing coverage of governance matters rather than sensational topics, even if sometimes it whets the public appetite, fact-based journalism. But there's the issue of election monitoring, which we think the media should undertake much more impartially and so on and so forth. And part of that is what we've emphasized, that as media too, we don't usually do more post-elections. We do a lot before elections, but after elections, we don't revisit campaign promises that we've documented or that we should document, and hold those leaders accountable. Because it's also a way of building trust. When you get people to do what they said they would do, then citizens can begin to reconnect with the process. Of course, we need more capacity building and then inclusion efforts in terms of promoting participation of women, young people, and persons with disabilities. This is one of the key result areas of our component 4, which we have repeatedly emphasized while we're doing all this work. Then the security agencies. Well, the key demand across the 6 zones and the platforms was that the police, civil defense corps, and the military came into this because the military has become part of our elections. And this is also one issue that I think will still have to be interrogated. There are schools of thought, especially led by people like Mr. Femi Falana, Senior Advocate of Nigeria, that elections should essentially be the entire responsibility of the police. But we do know that we have security platform on elections, and it involves the military. So the key issues remain that they should stay impartial and professional throughout the election process. There should be more training and professionalism in terms of building capacity for election management on the part of the security agencies. And the media is interested in this because our dear SP, we still have issue that even when journalists are accredited to cover the elections, security agents still obstruct some of them, challenge them, and even ask them to produce identity cards, even though they will have INEC accreditation. So this is something that we believe should be looked into. And then early deployment and the response quickly to threats. And then, of course, the protection mandate. This is where we're saying protect journalists, monitors, observers, because protecting them too enhances the credibility of the electoral process and trust. But for rapid response, there was this observation that, so the way my election officials and materials are deployed on election day is that you have these rack centers where INEC officials move to the different polling units. And normally they will not move if they don't have security agents accompanying them. So in Edo, for example, INEC was ready, but the officials were not ready because they still have to report, maybe do drillings, salutes, and the rest of them. So it's important to also work in tandem with INEC in terms of getting your men available so that they can move with the election materials. So finally, second to the last, the report looked at the role of the judiciary. There's been a lot of debate on this, and the key issues for citizens in all those forums and other stakeholders is that electoral disputes should be adjudicated impartially, and that there should be sanctions on individuals in accordance with electoral statutes, timely delivery of justice. And I guess this is also an issue now in the current electoral reform. The whole thing about dealing with electoral petitions in a timely manner such that they are resolved before things go haywire. Then transparency, reliability, and there should also be institutional reappraisal in terms of the procedures, internal procedures with which justice is dispensed over electoral matters. And then we have the Inter-Party Advisory Council. The issues here are targeted at the political parties, and I already highlighted the whole question of internal democracy and the rest of them, and the need for them to also collaborate more with INEC and the CSOs. Well, we also believe that citizens have their own role to play in all this. Of course, it's a kind of an egg and omelette thing, which one comes first, because here we're saying citizens should register, they should vote and remain engaged. But citizens are also saying, we have been discouraged, but we're still saying that participation is still the key. And the report is encouraging citizen participation so that they could have a say in the process. One crucial recommendation for citizens has to do with knowledge, some form of literacy about how misinformation and disinformation works. And that's part of our work is to enlighten them on at least always pausing before they share all those kind of things that can create problems. So we feel that citizens too should be part of fact checking. So in conclusion, what this report has essentially said is that credible elections demand cooperation, transparency, and accountability from all the actors, institutional, political, and civic alike. We all have to cooperate, we have to be transparent, and we should be ready to be accountable. And therefore, every stakeholder must reappraise and reform and recommit to integrity for democracy to thrive.
Because I know mine is a goodwill message, and I want to maintain the protocols. I have a few paragraphs. We gather here today in the shadow of the deep betrayal, the betrayal of the sovereign will of the Nigerian people, our electoral process, which ought to be the sacred arena where the people's voice is heard and their choice respected, has become systematically captured and commodified. It has been transformed into a marketplace where votes are auctioned and the collective will of the majority is subverted by a privileged few. The result is a tragic farce, a political class occupying public offices, not by the mandate of the people, but through the manipulation of a compromised system. Their victories are hollow, echoing in a vacuum of legitimacy, while the genuine choice of the working people, the demos in our democracy, is silenced. This is not mere political failure. It is a systemic violence against the aspirations of every worker, trader, farmer, and youth whose sweat and blood build this nation, only to be disenfranchised by the very process meant to empower them. The consequences of that are reflected on the crass level of governance provided to Nigeria across all strata of government in the country, the huge suffering and the deliberate affliction of the people by those in public offices as if they are scourging Nigerians for not voting for them, but they manage to find themselves into office. What we then see is that nearly 150 million multi-dimensionally poor people in Nigeria, the dilapidated infrastructure across the nation, roads that are not passable, public schools that are abandoned, hospitals that are decayed and classified public utilities, and the unrestrained insecurity. In this bleak landscape, the media stands as a crucial trench in the battle for the soul of our nation. The fourth estate must summon the courage to be a voice for the voiceless, not a megaphone for the powerful. It must publish the unvarnished truth about the entire election cycle, the pre-election rigging, the vote buying, the intimidation, and the post-election judicial manipulations. It must resist being swamped by a tidal wave of propaganda and manipulation orchestrated by the political elite, whose only interest is self-preservation. This is why the initiative of the International Press Center is not just welcome. It is a vital act of resistance. And it is why we are particularly excited by this signing of the Memorandum of Understanding with Nigeria Association of Women Journalists and the Guild of Corporate Online Publishers. These organizations, representing the critical fronts of gender sensitivity reporting and a dynamic digital space, are positioned to tear down the veils of deceit. They can ensure that the public is not just informed, but empowered, the politicians are not just covered, but held to account. The working class and the suffering masses of Nigeria are watching. Our trust cannot be rebuilt with empty promises, but only with demonstrable integrity, courage, and unwavering commitment to the truth. We challenge the media to stand on the side of the people, be the mirror that reflects our reality, not the curtain that hides it. Be the compass that guides us to genuine democracy, not a tool used to legitimize its counterfeit. I was, and I'm still, a journalist, one that walked these paths and faced the same challenges. So I still remember the circumstances under which we worked, but in the midst of all this, emerged great men and women who published the truth and who continually inform the public with the objective realities. Let us build with the light of truth by letting our personal courage to come to the fore as another election cycle is here again. We consider 2027 election a testing ground for your resilience as journalists who wants to uphold the banner and the ethos of our profession. However, our prognosis for this cycle looks very bleak, but the media can become a catalytic agent for change to rebuild the trust of the people and empower them to take remedial actions for the good of our nation.